Hello everyone, welcome back to the Zach F1 channel and welcome back to my series of F1 this week. And my god, have we got a lot of good news to get into. But before that, if you like what you see, like and subscribe, follow me on Twitter and join my Discord server if you want to talk about F1 a bit more. But anyway, let's go and talk about all of the stuff that's been happening in F1 recently. So, last weekend we had the Monaco Grand Prix. Now, as suspected, qualifying brilliant. Mercedes looked fast in practice. McLaren, no one really knew where they were and everything. Made up for an amazing qualifying. Leclerc taking pole, Piastri second, Sainz third, and Verstappen down in sixth. That was brilliant. However, as per usual, the race was a bore fest. Now, there was about 3 or 4 overtakes overall. However, it was literally everyone just overtaking Sargent and then Sargent deciding that he remembered who he was and overtook Zhou. That's my GOAT. In the race, there was actually still a few major things that happened. Now, of course, this has to be one of the most unlucky F1 weekends for a constructor, in my opinion, I've ever seen at least. Haas, first of all, qualifying P12, P14, bit rubbish for them. Normally Hulkenberg can try to get into that top 10, but that wasn't even the worst bit. They then got found out to have irregularities with the DRS for their cars, which then meant they had to start at the back of the grid. And when you're starting at the back of the grid, it's bad enough. However, when you're starting at the back of the grid and you have the future F4 driver of Sergio Perez, things tend to get a little bit more interesting. Now, there's actually quite a lot of debate when it comes to this crash. For me, I think the main culprit was Magnussen. Purely because, who does he think he is? Does he actually think he's Senna? Going for gaps there, it was never going to happen. However, Perez should have given him a little bit more room to go, but Magnussen very much should have backed out of the move because ultimately he crashed out Perez, Perez crashed out Magnussen, Hulkenberg tried to get through and Perez collected him on the way down. And the damage to the Red Bull was so immense. Literally, there was only one tyre left on that Red Bull. It literally looked like the only thing left was the cockpit that the drivers sit in. It was like insane, considering it was actually a safe crash as well. You watch the replays. It's not actually a terrible crash, just everything in the car crumbled. And apparently it could cost Red Bull anywhere up to, I believe it's in dollars, $2 million. And that is just crazy. They've even said this could affect their development later on in the season if they carry on having big crashes like this. For me, I think that's a little bit crazy to be saying this early on in the season, but with it being Perez in that car, who knows what could happen? He could easily have another one of those crashes. And then not only this, for some lap 1 drama, we then had both Alpines coming together because all of a sudden Ocon decided he was bored with F1 and he didn't want his seat anymore. So he dive bombed his teammate for that 10th position. And of course, in Monaco, a track you can't overtake on, you can guess what happened. And to further increase Alpine's frustrations, Ocon carried on with the car, but then it was too damaged, so he had to retire the car after the red flag. And also, he has a 5-place grid penalty for Canada. And who knows, we might not even be seeing him in the Canadian Grand Prix. It was that bad. Alpine have said they are really seriously considering his future at the team, and it could be as soon as Canada. Now, for me, I don't think it will be as early as Canada. I think that would be very optimistic or pessimistic, depending on how much you like Ocon, of how quickly they can get someone in and out of that seat, considering technically still has the contract until the end of 2024, and it'd be quite messy if they just dropped him right here and there. I don't think Alpine would want that, considering their woes already. However, I do think it sort of sets in his future where Ocon's not going to be staying there after 2024. I think they are seriously done with him. And it looks like Doohan, for me, it will probably be in 2025 because obviously Doohan, he is their reserve driver right now, so he could easily get into that Alpine seat. It's just whether or not they have to deal with any complications getting Ocon out of that seat, because he will fight for it. Ocon fights everyone. I would be surprised if he didn't fight losing his seat as well. I forgot to mention this, but I'll quickly mention it now as well. But also on lap 1, Carlos Sainz and Piastri had more contact. The amount of contact they've had is actually crazy. Sainz tried to be a little bit too cheeky with Piastri. Piastri had nowhere to go. Sainz made contact and got a puncture. Luckily for him though, the red flag was called out before the end of lap 1, so he got reverted back to P3 at the start of the grid, getting a second try. But wow, the Sainz Piastri drama is just always amazing, considering they're always next to each other on the grid as well somehow. But then after lap 1, it was pretty much a bore fest. Nothing happened. However, we do have a new Monaco Grand Prix winner, and his name is Charles Leclerc. We had some of the best commentating on the final lap. Oh my god, that was poetic for Leclerc. Like, I'm not a Leclerc fan, I'm not a Ferrari fan, but wow, it made me feel really good for him, and it was just incredible to watch, to be fair. Well done to him. I would have preferred it to have been Piastri, but you know, his win is coming soon. Hopefully in Canada, although we'll see if Red Bull are back by then. However, this now means Leclerc has a 30-point gap to Verstappen, so for me it's still a bit too early to be talking about driver championship stuff. However, like I said in my Monaco video, constructor championship is well and truly battling it out, because if Perez keeps that seat any further than the summer break, Red Bull 100% will be not winning the constructors championship. Ferrari are less than 30 points away from them, and they have 2 consistent drivers. Red Bull has one good driver, one very good driver I mean, and one dead awful driver that they need to get rid of right now. But it does make me so excited for the rest of the season, knowing, yes, maybe I'm being a bit pessimistic for the Drivers' Championship. Maybe it could go down to that. I think people bringing in Norris especially is quite unrealistic. He has a 50-point gap, and considering Ferrari and McLaren look like they're on equal pace, it'd be really hard for Norris to be able to boost even ahead of Leclerc, I think, at the minute. But I think at least we know the constructors by far is gonna be amazing. Speaking of some amazing news as well, I think this would be pretty amazing for the sport, and it is talking about Bottas back to Williams. Now, we know Sauber's seats are quite undetermined at the minute. Could be Sainz partnering up Hulkenberg. I'm pretty sure Zhou's gonna be gone. I think that's pretty much certain, because if Sauber chose to keep someone, it'd probably be Bottas. Bottas apparently has had rumours, which are pretty reputable, from the likes of Speed Cafe, V Sabladet. It's a Finnish news article paper, I'm pretty sure. This all comes from Planet F1, and they are pretty reliable themselves, and they said these articles are very trustworthy, so we can go off that. However, all it really talks about is Bottas talking to James Vowles, having a meeting with him, and for me, this doesn't set anything in stone, really. It's way too early on to be saying that Bottas will be going to Williams, considering he's still a good driver, even in this day and age. After getting kicked out of Mercedes, going to Sauber, he would still be a very good driver for any of the teams. And we've got to remember, Alpine will have a spare seat, Haas will have a spare seat, Sauber still have that seat if he wants to stay there, Williams will have that seat. You've even got Red Bull Mercedes. I doubt he'd get one of those seats, however, they're still available technically. I mean, that's if Perez doesn't stay. And we also have Aston Martin potentially with an open seat, but I generally think there's more chance of Bottas going to Red Bull than there is going to Aston Martin, because Daddy Stroll would never let that happen to his son. But I just think, considering how many teams have open seats and how early on in the season it is, I doubt we'll be hearing where Bottas will be going until at least July, August time minimum. But the main thing we can get from this news is that teams still want him. There is interest for Bottas. I think it'd be really nice as well if he went back to his old team, where he did have his first F1 races, obviously before he went to Mercedes. I remember watching Bottas in that Williams. He was phenomenal. And this was the point in F1 where Williams still were pretty decent, where they were coming P3 in the Constructors' Championship. I know, feels like a gazillion years ago these days where Williams are now. It'd be a nice little story for Bottas to go back to Williams. However, he is a hot piece of property on the market for these lower end teams especially, so it's anyone's guess where he could be going. We just probably know now that he will be staying at least until after 2025. But anyway, that is all the news in F1 this week. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all came out knowing a little bit more about what's going on with F1 at the minute. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all later for another F1 video. Bye bye.